evening, folks, and welcome to the Square D, the Jack the Ripper of GAA Analytics. I'm joined as ever by the irrepressible professor himself, Mr. Stephen O'Mara, as I always say. Top Gear have the Stig, the GAA have Stephen O'Mara. Stephen, good evening. How's she cutting?
Not so bad, not so bad. Flat
You're
out
probably
again.
like
Sunday out.
myself.
Go
You're
on.
probably like myself, 3 days of mourning here in Dublin after our great neighbours Meath were relegated to the Charlton Cup. How have you been coping with this tragedy?
Well, funnily, having coached in Meath and I've done a bit of analytics, I started turning a little bit green. Now, not the whole way now, don't get me wrong.
Careful now, careful now.
I started viewing my teenage years in a slightly different light with the romance of hanging around Central Town. But yeah, you did hear it here first. We might get a soundbite out on that. Despite the victory against Cork in the first game, I felt all the metrics were wrong. And yeah, it has proved to be the case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You and I, having been children of the 80s, know well the traumatic youth. As Sean Boylan's Meath dismantled us on many occasions, us having built a substantial lead. But interesting enough, actually, for those listeners or those who are new, the very first episode actually of the Square D actually detailed that Meath performance in Cork, where there was huge talk of a resurrection. Any Meath followers, anyone from the Meath selectors panel tuning in tonight might do well to go back and have a look at those stats, because not a lot has changed in the meantime. But look, we wish you well down in Meath, up to Royal County. We hope to see you soon back in the All Ireland.
Don't enjoy it too much, Conor. I have to go back and do work in Meath. Don't be getting me in trouble.
Disingenuous as ever. So look at tonight. Tonight, right? For a lot of GEA coaches, aficionados, GEA nerds tuning in, this is a real seminal episode in the evolution of the Square D. Tonight, we're really going to look at how the game has evolved. What are the non-negotiables, right? Particularly from the kickouts to trying to kick through the middle third, kicking into blanket defences, okay, and how the possession game is now the only show in town. And we're going to go first to our featured match, which is obviously in Dr. Hyde Park, Roscommon and Galway. Stephen, just give us, before we get into the nitty gritty here, right? Just give us a brief overview here of the match.
Well, I suppose I'm gonna make reference to a tweet I put out yesterday. I was trying to put it out in the middle of the Donegal down game, which I was watching on BBC iPlayer. But there was no real stoppage, so I did it yesterday evening, and it just two things jumped out at me yesterday. I watched Donegal down, which we're looking at second here, and obviously I watched then Galway and Roscommon. And first thing jumped out, I didn't know who it was. It was Conor Gilligan, and the first thing I just thought was really interesting to listen to an Ulster analyst analysing Ulster football, because it wasn't the same drab negative rhetoric. He actually understood the nuts and bolts of the dynamics crystal clearly, but could explain them in very simple terms. But I just thought it was interesting that it wasn't all this negative rhetoric that we're used to, I suppose, from, shall we say, the 26 counties or the non-Ulster counties maybe. And that jumped out at me first. And I suppose what jumped out at me an hour and a half later was that the Galway Roscommon game, and this isn't you're going to see, this is, I mean, praiseworthy nearly, but it's not an attack, but it jumped out at me at half time. This game is more Ulster than Ulster games. And I went back and did the stats on it afterwards. And at half time, there had been less phases of possession in the Galway Roscommon game yesterday than there were in the Donegal Derry Ulster final the year earlier. And I was obviously working live at that game. But I watched the Sunday game, and what I heard was the halftime rhetoric was, and this went, everybody I met spoke about this, the death of Gaelic football, and it's so slow and careful and boring. Yet nobody made this point in a Connacht semi-final. When the analysis was there, that that Derry Donegal game had 30 phases in the first half, 15 each. And yesterday, Galway and Roscommon had 29, 16 and 13. So I just thought it was striking for me that this has got, the lack of consistency. Now, I don't really care. I love misanalysis as a coach because you get to get edges as a result. But I just thought that the lack of consistency in the analysis is actually frightening. But as we're going to see in this game, there were sections of the game where it was Ulster style or where it was Connacht style, and ultimately Galway excelled at Ulster style.
And just so we get on to that, right? Not to embellish your own credentials, okay? But you were the stats man and head of performance analytics for Galway back in 2018. When Galway made it to the All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin, in actual fact, having missed a penalty in that first half, their expected score was to be 3 points ahead at half-time, right? That was very much following hands-on ball, right? Hands-on ball through the phases. Pádraig Joyce obviously came in, reintroduced, obviously, the romanticised version of Galway football after that, kicking the ball. 2 years went to the wilderness, right? They came back in from out of the cold, and now they've gone back to the hands-on ball. Sorry, when Galway are successful, it's hands-on ball. When they go back to the romanticised version of Galway, it's car crash.
Well, that's what this game yesterday is showing. And let me say, my ducks lined up in a row. So let me just go through this briefly. So first of all, and let's get this from a context of that average of 4 points per 10 phases in the league. And Roscommon were more or less in and around average scores and score concessions. Galway were the outlier defensively. But we see here, and this takes out injury time where it's game chasing territory. Roscommon have 3.2 scores per 10 phases. The Galway's 4.9. When you bear in mind that Roscommon did a job on the kickouts, in every other regard, Galway basically battered them nearly from start to finish. We see the first half. It's total score per 10 phases of 5.4 to 1.9. That's a hiding in the extreme. Now, when it's low phases, the scoreline doesn't reflect the extent of the hiding. And you're still only ever one goal, one ropey ball into the box or something away from being... there was a game with similar stats to this. I was involved in a club last year, and my team were losing 2 to 7 points after 40 minutes. And I looked at the stats sheet and I was like, oh dear Lord. So that's a factor. But statistically speaking, and the expected score is actually 5.9 per 10 phases. Now, if we look at this, what's notable is the second quarter of this game, right, had 14 phases. So that's even lower again. This was the most Ulster performance I've ever seen in Gaelic football. And it was brilliant. And it was probably necessary against this Roscommon quite efficient defence. But if we see here, Galway have had 6 phases with shots out of 7 total. Their total score is 5.7. Like 4.9 is your gold standard. That's 70% shots and 70% of them converted. That's assuming it's all points. Expected score for 10 phases, 7.2. Roscommon have 2 out of 7. Galway have 6 out of 7. Now, what's notable in this is that Galway had their average possession. There was one that lasted 12 or 14 seconds. If you take that one out, I have it here in front of me, bear with me. If you exclude that one, it was 1 minute 40 seconds per phase. With that quick one, it was 1 minute 27 seconds per phase. Like that's like Derry and Donegal on steroids. But again, the point we have here is that it worked, and it worked brilliantly. And if we move on, what we see, that's if we just take it an extra minute or two, then we look, and it was almost like at halftime, somebody said, now lads, I know we're winning and all, but Galway love traditional football. Why don't we go out and kick more ball away at the start of the second half? And that's exactly what they did. Kicked a man-on-man early on. Conroy to Burke, probably not a better kicking and receiving combination in the country. Went 8-3. They then kicked 3 or 4 balls away. They absolutely didn't have to. Conceded 1-1 of the turnover, nearly 2-1 of the turnover. And you see here in this 6-minute phase, Roscommon get 5 shots out of 5, expected score per 10 phases of 9.6, total 12, 1-3 from 5 phases. Galway get 1 out of 4. That's the one straight after half time. And then Galway go back to doing what they've done prior to that. And albeit even with an easy, fortunate goal, it's accounted for an expected score. Still, that 143 is 6.5 to 3.6. And that's up to injury time, if I'm not mistaken.
So just to go back over, right? What's very interesting here, sorry, 1 second, right? Yeah. Last week, okay, we analysed Monaghan and Tyrone, okay? And something very similar has come up here again, right? Monaghan's downfall and Achilles' heel was basically kicking that ball in the middle third, right? And as you identified last week, when they stopped doing that, right, and used their main assets, right? Obviously, Ryan O'Hanlon, Carl O'Connell, right, McCarthy, they transformed their attack and play. We're seeing this every single week. Like, I mean, is the message out there? Stop kicking the ball, lads.
Well, we're seeing it every week because we haven't analysed Kerry or Dublin properly yet this year. Dublin, we did against Derry. Kerry, still Kerry. We've won the championship. Yeah, the league, sure. Who cares? So I wouldn't be taking much of a Kerry until we see them in the group games or maybe even the All-Ireland quarter final. But Galway are far more natural football than Monaghan in the middle third, I will say. So it's not the exact same metric. And when Galway got man-on-man and they kicked it was brilliant. But they tried to kick 3 of those at the sweepers. I couldn't believe the one of the soundest, most better life-on players I've ever come across. Johnny Heaney hit one I just couldn't believe. So I don't know what was for instruction given. Let's shake this up and kick a few more. I don't know. But if you look at this, map here, sorry. If we look at the expected score, we'll see it. First quarter was more or less even. That second quarter, we've just seen the stats. Galway battered them. Then we see early second half, it spikes. The thick line is the actual score. The thin line is the expected score. And then even from sort of here where the arrow was pointing, Galway basically battered them for the rest of the game. So I'm not saying, look, we showed Galway against Mayo when they got man-on-man through that middle third. The quality. I said 7. Eaton bread is soon forgotten. Killian McDade's been injured. 8 international professional standard players, in my opinion, on the Galway team. I said 7 that day. I'd forgotten about Killian McDade because he was injured for a few games. Galway have 8. So when they got that man-on-man against Mayo, they butchered them with raw class. But the 3 they kicked away here were all into defences with a sweeper, with a +1. And we will come full circle to the point you made before the end about how IC18 has come full circle and is maybe even slightly better. And we'll chat about that before we move on. But ultimately, yes, Galway were kicking the ball away. Like, I was worried for their Division 1 status 2-3 games in because they were kicking ball after ball away. They seem to have got that memo. Now, I presume, I don't know, I don't want to sound like, I'm doing analysis for everybody here, but the chances are that some of the Galway players listen to this and say, you know what, like, we were told this in 18 and 19, and well, let's look at the data's there, the evidence there. They've more or less stopped. And as we see in that period, they 6 minutes where they went mad kicking the ball. Beautiful traditional Galway. They were beaten 1-3 to a point. The rest of the game, they absolutely battered Roscommon in a phase per phase,
Yeah, one other element that we discussed, which is pretty extraordinary. The kick out, right, has always been one of the most seminal factors or metrics in the composition of the winning and losing of any game. This is somewhat of an outlier. Talk us through the actual value. Now, part of this is going to point to Galway perhaps having the best defence in the country. But talk us through the value of the kickouts, because the stats here are extraordinary.
Yeah, and again, look, maybe it's an element of the analytics. Like when I was with Galway, with Donegal, like aside along with maybe Dublin, Monaghan, Kerry, they were the standout teams of. I'm used to hands on ball, short kickouts being profitable, but you see here Galway. We're forced along quite a lot now because there's so much technical stuff to get through. Bernie Power was okay. I mean, I sang his praises here. I've made a positive comparison maybe between him and Conor Gleeson. There was more moving parts because Roscommon's press was quite smart. There were a couple of short clips missed by Bernie Power, but there were moving parts compared to the ones against Mayo in the league final where it was 4v3 standing still. They might as well have been traffic cones on the training ground. He still did hit 2 key ones, one early in the second half. They were struggling. That throw the shape, go to the D. But the point of all that is there's Galway's kickouts. They were generally forced long, or at least Bernie had to put it into someone's chest to be uncontested from 40, 50 yards away. There's Roscommon. And Galway weren't really trying to give him the kick out. It wasn't a massively aggressive press. They just couldn't really stop it. But the really intriguing figures off this is that Galway, if I get my figures up here, Galway from their 15 kickouts total, that's including one and lost. They scored 4 and conceded 1-3. Roscommon that's counting the first turnover each. I'm actually going to go into my stats here and read them out. You won't see this because you've got a different visual up. But if we look here, Roscommon's figures are key because they got off 23 out of 23 kickouts. So they got hands on ball on 23 out of 23.
Unbelievable.
Not noteworthy of this. If we look at Galway, Galway have scored 6. I've scored 3 from 6, which is pretty good. That have conceded a goal. Let me have a quick look there. I think the goal was it off a turnover. The goal was off a turnover. So yeah. So the point is, even though Galway's figures are, on the whole, should have been good. Ultimately, they made no profit off their hands on ball kickouts. Scored 3 points, conceded a goal, and that's maybe a concern. Albeit, take that goal out. That figure could change radically. But the expected score was actually a slight loss. What's really interesting from a Roscommon point of view, and this probably alludes to what we'll move on to now, more to Galway than Roscommon, because again, if Roscommon are hitting it around that 4 points per 10 average in the National League, and in and around that against Mayo, if I remember correctly, it was their defending one today against Mayo. Why have they dropped off so sharply? But they got off, if I just read this out here, they got off 21 short kickouts. 16 to the full back line, 5 to the half back line. Now, a few of those half backs might have been earned, but they scored 3 points from 21. That's very, very low. And they conceded 1-5 on the turnover. So from their short kickouts, they've actually made a loss of 0.24 of a point per kick. And that's for modern football has gone hands on ball. There's a bit of a rhetoric now, which is broadly speaking flawed. The long kick out. Tyrone won All Ireland with it. But I made the point with Tyrone beat Kerry in 2021 that they're only 1 goal off a long kick out, or 1-1 or 1-2 away from causing surprises. But they're only a bad day along kickouts away from losing to a Division 2 or even Division 3 team.
Yeah,
Fermanagh had their number at half time that year and went off their own game plan. The point I'm making is if you aren't making profit on hands on ball kickouts, you've got big problems. But I think this probably has more to do with Galway's defence than Roscommon's offence, as we'll see, because Roscommon's figures on this have generally been good.
Yeah, the rhetoric of Tyrone winning an All Ireland by long kickouts is rubbish, right? That long kickout in question, ever remembers, Morgan balloons it down the middle. Con Kilpatrick wins it. He turns, kicks it straight in to McKenna, right? And he engineered
point in all this.
Yeah, via Darren. Now, obviously, McKenna's gone, right? Now, that passage of play, is great. But also, no one went back and said, well, actual fact, Tyrone went 26 minutes of that All-Ireland final without scoring. And the only reason they won the day is because Mayo kicked the wrapper off the ball, right, and failed to raise any flag in a similar period of time,
Not to digress, the stats are there because I looked at them before one of the shows we did on Tyrone. Tyrone profited usually off long kickouts in that All-Ireland final and semi-final. And against Donegal in Ulster, albeit with an extra man for a period of it. So, but the point I'm making is it's a bit random. You make your own luck, you structure it, you win your break. Roscommon are winning more breaks in every game. That's not a coincidence. They won more breaks here in this game again, significantly so. That's not a coincidence. But ultimately, it's gambling going along. Like for me, if you can get hands on ball every time, you have to make value out of it. And as I say, go back to 18, Monaghan and Galway were both making between 3 and 4 points per 10 short kickouts, even when you take away the turnover. Dublin were, I think, marginally higher. Kerry then came in, I think, somewhere between 2 and 2.5. Because they look to play that fluid open football. The point I'm making here is that's a problem. Well, it was a problem for Roscommon the last day. But ultimately, I'm saying it's gold for Galway. And we're going to look in a minute now forensically at their defence. And we go back full circle, not 2018.
Exactly. I mean, if you concede, right, if you give the opposition 23 kickouts out of 23, by Christ, your defence better be absolutely sublime, or you're going to get roasted. And this is what we're moving. This Galway defence. Now, bearing in mind, right, this is a Roscommon forward line, right, who picked the pocket of Mayo.
Yeah.
Who is a tough bloody unit. I mean, we saw Mayo against Galway. They did a bloody good job on them, right? Here they are against natural forwards, lads coming in on a high with 100%. Momentum. They give them 23 to 23 kickouts, and they stopped them.
Yeah, the word you said is sublime. And look, because I'm doing stats, I'm not seeing the football as much during the game, and it's a lot of work to get 2 games on a Sunday into a show less than 24 hours later or 24 hours later. So I only look forensically. Like, I still need to spend another full day on it. But I had a good forensic look at this morning. And I said, we'll do one key thing of the show. Because if we look at those stats I put up 5 games into the National League, and let's assume it didn't change massively, the average score concession, or the average score per 10 phases was 4 points. That's goals, everything thrown in. And the huge outliers were Tyrone were conceding 4.7 per 10. The outliers, Mayo were conceding 3.7 per 10. They were the second best. Galway were conceding 3.1 per 10. Now, expected score was 3.7. There's that enigma we've spoken about. I'm guessing their actual expected score maybe around 3.4. Ultimately, they're the best defence in Division 1 this year. And again, Roscommon, who were hitting that 4 out of 10, were in at 3 or 3.1 expected score and actual score. What are Galway doing now? I'm going to go back full circle to 2018, right? I came into Galway at the end of 2017, start of 2018, and I went back on the 2017 season. I looked at 5 key games, 3 championship, 2 league. My recollection, I stand to be corrected, my recollection was, but it was the key point, whether my numbers are right or wrong. 22 times Galway tried to engage Kerry in their half in the quarter-final of the All-Ireland. And on all 22 occasions, Kerry carried the ball over the halfway line, generally with Galway on the back foot, defending man-on-man with 4, 5, 6, 7 players. And I kind of looked at this and I said, well, if you're not making the turnovers up there, why don't you just drop off and defend in numbers when you get there? Now, there were 2 key points of this. Number one, it transpired when they had their get set correct. Kevin Walsh at the time had, without question, the best structured defence in the country. It was basketball. He introduced me to channels. 5 channels has become a bit more key, and I think probably started with Kevin Stritch, the guy who coached Longford when they beat Meath in the championship. Coach Castleknock to the Dublin final out of nowhere. Probably started with him because he said it to me a number of years ago, and I see it in place now. And I hear people that don't know him do it now. Walsh had 6 channels. Now he's talking about 5 channels. But at the time, there was nobody in Ireland defending structurally as well as Galway when they got set. But they weren't. The problem with 17 and presumably prior to that was they weren't getting set correctly. I came in, recommended just drop off. But I also, there's a key point, a bit of a bad news sandwich here because, to give the full story, is I can't not show these. It also jumped out with me that, Shane Walsh and Ian Burke, they're genius. They're genii, they're artists. You don't get the best architect in the country in to do your house and get them block laying. And that's how I would talk about the magical forwards. And I just got the sense looking at Burke and Walsh, didn't really want to defend. And why would you have them defend? So the recommendation I gave, which was taken, was leave. And Comer was too keen to run around trying to make impossible turnovers. Why don't you leave those 3 forward? I concluded very quickly those 3 were as good as that in Dublin had. And I still stand over that. Possibly better. Why don't you? Then you had this 3 up top. You had a brilliant Kevin Walsh basketball style defense at the back. And Galway had the best defensive figures in the country that year, broadly speaking, when you take a few things up and down. But You look here. So the three boys were given a golden ticket. Stay ahead of the ball unless you're needed. It was 11 behind the ball, not the 14 that people were talking about. It was 11, three systematically up. But you watch here, why would you leave Shane Wallace north of the ball? Because here he is trying to do everything right. Sorry, let me share that screen with you. Apologies. And this will just give you an idea now. This comes full circle. Shane Wallace made the best turnover of the game as well, which I'll show in case he's watching. Don't want to throw the cup of tea at the screen before we get finished. Here's Shane Wallace just north of the 45, looking around, looking back. He sees there's a Roscommon man going behind him. He kind of points to somebody. Now, next thing, for me, he's broken the 2v1 rule. Now, maybe there's something different going on, but that looks like what I was analysing, in 2018-19 of Galway's front three. And all of a sudden, the sweeper has to come out to make it man on man. It's not ideal defending. Now, again, here we watch Ian Burke. And I have Ian Burke ahead of any forward in the country, except maybe Sean O'Shea, Conor Callahan, Ian Burke. If I have my choice of forwards, they're the three I'm taking of what's currently there. Obviously, Murphy's retired. But we see Ian Burke to the wide oval. He should see, there's not really any point in going to the ball here because they're just going to pop it over my head. But it happens anyway. I marked that as a grade 2 breach. Now, in 2017, when they played Kerry, what I'd have seen was Matthew Tierney. He wasn't there. But the Galway man next up would have run to the ball and it would have been slipped in behind them. Same as we saw with Tyrone when Began came forward last week, right? But this whole phase, I broke their whole defensive structure down reasonably forensically. I want to do more on it. And you've got to, I think Cian O'Neill is all over this. And I think the huge credit has to go to how did they keep Roscommon so tight, scores-wise, three per 10 phases. Tierney doesn't get stuck to the ball. Now, a lot of this is natural intelligence, but again, part of choice has gone for that kind of player. You've got to give credit where that's due as well. You put smart players in the team.
Peter Cook.
Cookie's getting back. And you see here, all of a sudden, this over. Right, Burke has been grade 2 breached. Now, maybe there's a thing, let's make them play the game. And he's been told to do that. But he was doing that in 2017 and 18 and 19 anyway. So the chances are that's just Ian Burke being the architect being asked to lay the blocks.
And sorry, just to clarify, the last time Ian Burke, right, Damien Comer.
Hang on. You're going to spoil me. You're going to spoil me with my key point there. Hang on. Let's stick with the defence.
We're ruining Christmas, are we?
Yeah, you're ruining Christmas. Keep
going.
You nearly think I did a lesson plan for these things beforehand. Dear Lord.
Right. You're talking about unstructured play here, O'Mara.
So it's 2v3, but Cook and Tierney, two highly intelligent boys. But obviously, this is coached. Stay behind. Now, watch this. This isn't... So they don't get briefed. Tyrone last week would have let a Monaghan man slip in the back. Now, watch Matthew Tierney. And this is... Football has got so safe. I often sit up in Croke Park and say, you know what? I was playing Junior D there for Ballyboho last weekend. I could go out onto that field in Croke Park and in possession, I could be actually not even just not a liability. I could actually be a positive force because maybe the analytical brain can see something. Nobody ever put heat on me. Stand around, have a look up, throw it that way. Obviously, when the other guy had the ball, I'd be in trouble. But, where football is gone now, the really top-end coaches are saying, we're not letting you do that. We're going to force positions where there's heat on you, whether you like it or not. And modern footballers aren't used to this. And even good footballers turn to sand very quickly a lot of the time. Watch Tierney's line. He lets them get to there. See? What do we learn at under 10 if we're coaching at all? Stay goal side, keep between him and the goal. Tierney pulls the brakes to let him down the line. Now, look at Peter Cook, number 12, okay? Just keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on Tierney. Look at Carl Sweeney. I have a mental block with the name because there was a Carl Sweeney there 4 years ago. Look at Carl Sweeney. Man marking is meticulous. Now, do we see what's going on here? See, Tierney has actually let him beat him by a foot. Galway are still entirely structured. John Daly is sweeping. Sweeney is man marking perfectly. Actually letting him slightly inside him. But what's not easy to do, Connor, that I would want to do if I was in that situation? Coming in from Junior D. What would I want to do here if I was in that situation?
Cut back in and you're right. Back towards the D, swing it over the bar.
No, I'd want to put the brakes on and hand it back 5 yards to a better
Ah,
footballer.
sorry, I'm more a Dermot Connolly type champagne footballer than you, Mara.
You're thinking Dermot Connolly here now. That's what I want to do. I want to hop, give it back, recycle, and maybe a better footballer scores 10 passes later. But they're making it hard to do it. Watch. Now as he comes back, see where Peter Cook has got to?
Yeah.
That's planned. That's structured. They're saying you're not having easy ball to process your way through this game. Okay, and I think this may be why Derry struggled against them putting 2 and 2 together, because Derry are processed to the core. And all of a sudden you can't process because they're making you go down the channels. John Daly and Dylan McHugh are so well positioned they can afford to. And then there's heat. Watch Dylan McHugh have come to realise or suspect. I thought with John Daly being the brains behind the operation of the defence. I think McHugh, he's on the arrow there. It may be a double-headed attack in terms of the defensive unit of Daly. Watch McHugh. So they've got a double sweeper, and they're still putting heat down the channel. That's some, hats off to Keane O'Neill here.
So this is as you espoused before. This is a tag +2.
Well, it's not really, because once you've got a +2, there's no tagging. It's all zone, and we're going to see it. If you have a +1, you can tag +1. You can't tag +2 unless they have 2 cornerbacks sitting.
Unless they've been cornerbacks advanced.
Yeah. So the point here is now that required a 40-yard backward pass. Now, inter-county football, you should, but again, if Ian Burke was positioned different, I'm not saying better because he had to be where he was, but that just gives an opportunity for one of the front three to dart out and intercept, or just a bad pass. But the point is, they've had to make 2 risky plays. What have they got for them? Nothing. Galway got themselves a 20% chance of a turnover in the tackle up the way and a 5 or 10% chance of a bad pass down the way. Now, we watch here. Let me get my bearings on this one. Ball comes back across the field. So it's played back, it's recycled. I go through this whole phase. Now, watch here. And again, great comparison between this and Tyrone last week and even Monaghan. But Tyrone, the extreme. What have we got here? I've got Ian Burke and Shane Walsh exactly where I recommended they would go in 2018. Up ahead of the ball. Don't need you to defence. There's 11 boys there can defend better. You lads stay ahead of the ball. That's where I'd want them. And there's an outlet if there's a turnover. There's 8v7. Here's what Monaghan 8 Tyrone live on last week. There's 8v7 Roscommon in there. But do we see when you end up 8v7, somewhere you're 2v1, what's the only solution? Contract a deep zonal defence. Do we see where the Galway front line is? That even though I think it's Carl Sweeney is out 2v1 outside the 45, it's a staggered deep arc. They can all see the number on the back of the jersey to the man inside them. Comer's man, Damien Comer, I'll give you a side story about Damien Comer. I'll tell you now, Comer had 5 breaches, terrible breaches against Tyrone in the first league game I did in 2018. He went to Kevin Wallace looking for the video. Comer could now play cornerback. And it actually started a process in Galway where anyone with more than 2 breaches in a single game got the video. Comer never got another video because he took it in and he never made the same mistakes again. That's a measure of what a pro Comer is. But here he is. Watch. What would most corner forwards do? Probably follow him out the way. Comer stayed in. He tried to cut back. Has his defending angles and lines like a cornerback because he studied it. Where's your defensive line? John Daly is still in sweeping. Watch how they've a central channel. It's a deep. So you see the deep line, front of the arc. It's a central zonal channel. They're outnumbered, but they've still got a sweeper. And this man out on the left, Matthew Tierney, can still get to him before he can cause any trouble. John Daly is still sweeping.
Here we're espousing, right? This
just
is
to finish it off.
Right.
Just to finish it off. They try a brilliant kick pass, low percentage football kick as a sweeper, gets over the blocking hands by a centimetre. Even when they win it, Daly's back, doubling up, and it's a JJ Okocha. Looks dangerous. It's not. Roscommon man actually try, even on the hand pass out. It's brilliant, skillful football by Roscommon, but it's low percentage all the way until they eventually try to take a man out and get fouled for the third man tackle. And that's the first 2 or 3 we're going to look at. It's meticulously, structurally phenomenal defending.
So we're looking at this now, right? I mean, look at by all. It's I like most. All right, have espoused to virtues like Roscommon have some of the most natural scoring forwards in the country,
Agreed.
right? Without
Agreed.
question. That they went up against this Galway defence, right? And they're blown out the gate. Right. Now,
Yeah.
was it a case of, was this an off day for the Galway forwards? Conversely, Galway have done this. Now, if you're on the
Off
Roscommon
day for
side of the
Roscommon
fence,
forwards, I mean, yeah.
yeah, you're on the Roscommon side, so lads, what the hell should we have done here? How do we get around this? Dublin are looking at
Well,
this, Kerry are looking at this. If
well,
Galway do this, what do we do?
I will say I was looking at an equally well structured, albeit less athletic, Armagh defence this time last year. That was brilliant. And look, analytically, I would say I was happy that I gave some good ideas on how to break it, and I've put them up here. And I don't know, is there a link between that and the fact that their defensive figures have gone to pot? Maybe. Could you, like, Galway are fitter, they're faster, so they can get across the line more. Could you avoid this? Well, let's look at the next one. This will come full circle. We look at Donegal and down afterwards. But we look here again. This is Carl Sweeney. He's being sucked out the way by the Roscommon man, but no, he sees if I keep going. Sorry, I've forgotten my share screen again. Bear with me.
Roll it there, Roisin.
Roll it there, Roisin. Carl Sweeney thinks he got Roscommon man, tries to drag him out the way. Sees it's a 2v1, holds his ground. You can see him stutter step and put the brakes on, stays behind. What have we got now? Roscommon man in the yellow oval. He's the free man where there's no danger. Structurally meticulous defending, all ties into the 2v1 rule. They've got a double sweeper. They've still got heat down the channel. They've got a double sweeper. And look at that narrowed central zone. There's nobody further left than Johnny Heaney on that line. That looks like a 5-channel defence because their central channel will be channel 3, which would come just off the apex of the D. He's possibly a bit narrow, if anything, but watch Dylan McHugh here. And you've got to have the right guys, separate the dancer from the dance. Maybe if you put the wrong half back line in here tomorrow, it would fall apart. Yeah. Watch double sweep, heat on the ball, double sweeper. Watch Dylan McHugh, the left of the 2 sweepers. As this ball gets recycled down again, it looks like, is it? I think it's Jack Glynn. It's Jack Glynn or Johnny McGrath. I think that's Johnny McGrath, actually, sorry. It looks like Johnny McGrath. Looks like he's about to get 2v1, pulls the brakes on. Look at McHugh sniffing blood. He's out. Now, all of a sudden, what should be an easy kick pass, he wasn't expecting heat from 2 sides. Out over the sideline. Okay? Let's look at this. Was this coincidence? Matthew Tierney again in the white facing the yellow. Are we seeing the line he's let your man take? If you saw that in video, you see he actually checks the step. Even as your man is kind of half dropping the ball by accident, what does Tierney do?
He wants him down there.
Wants him down there. You ain't coming back out and playing easy football that a junior D could come down off the stands and take part in. No chance.
So this
now Roscommon are hand passing the fake space into Sean Kelly man marking. Double sweeper again. Narrow central channel clogged. Have to bring the ball back out the way. And again, watch Peter Cook, Paul Conroy darting out. Matthew Tierney's coming from behind. Heat on the ball again. Forces a sidestep. Turned over. And again, to finalise this one here now, if you told me on Saturday I'd be doing a clip on Shane Walsh's good defending, I'd have said, you mean his attacking, don't you? But to give him his dues, he's not a nuts and bolts defender. I'd walk behind the ball for 70 minutes, concentrating for 25 odd minutes in a blanket defence. Watch this again. Galway have them. Now, there's no actual sweeper here, and this is John Daly and Dylan McHugh are half sweeping all the time. So you see John Daly, he has a man, but he's kind of half covering the sweeping position. Shane Walsh is outside, ahead of the ball where I'd want him. Watch. They invite him down the channel. Walsh sniffs blood. And with the pace he has, as soon as your man's back was turned, Walsh took off. Look at him there. The white boots, the camera can hardly keep up with the speed of him. Turnover. So that is, I will say, at the come full circle, and you can talk to me about the 3 boys we're going to mention in a second. I think in 2018, structurally speaking, Galway had the best defence in the country. Dublin had the most effective defence, but they were faster than everybody. I have a video. I can't share it because it takes RTE footage. But I did do a video because there was somebody arguing we should be defended like Dublin, and I said Dublin defend like that because they're that fast. Chaos suits them. I did a piece on the All-Ireland semi-final on ball that only went through Sean Kelly, Shane Walsh, and Damien Comer. Dublin, it wasn't a structure you would want to copy unless you were that much faster than everybody compared to Dublin.
Yeah.
Galway had structurally the best defence in 2018. People are catching up, but where Kevin Walsh was miles ahead of them. And this now, for me, absolutely is the outlier, even maybe more so than Walsh's was in 18, because those channels, which were revolutionary at the time, are mainstream now. Even mediocre club managers, they might be doing them right, or club coaches, they might be doing them right, but they're aware of the concept. But that is a full-on stitch-up job, and that's why Galway had the best defensive record in the league, and again yesterday.
And your final point on this, right? The three lads.
Yes.
Like, which I tried to spoil it for you earlier on.
You tried to spoil it.
Burke, Damien Comer, Shane Walsh. Right.
Yeah.
Listen, anyone who's tuned in knows you have a love affair with Ian Burke, and rightly so, in a sporting sense, right? Burke is an exception, right? And the two lads, the three of them on the field, Galway are genuine contenders.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, and again, this will be a key point when we look at Donegal and down shortly, you can have all the tactics in the world, and a bad coach or a bad manager can make a good team to be bad. But there's only so far you can bring a bad or mediocre team to box above their weight level. That's a broad parameter. I'm not talking about Galway per se, but that's a broad parameter. Like, Galway were second only in Dublin in 2018. Like, they put out half a second team against Monaghan in the Super 8s. Otherwise, we're only beaten by Dublin that year. Beat Kerry League and Championship, beat now in Championship. If I'm not mistaken, and I'm confident in saying, Ian Burke, Shane Walsh, and Damien Comer have not started a championship match together since the All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin in 2018, which unexpected score they were 3-up on in half-time and level on 67 minutes, despite getting a hide in the second half. Because Comer was injured. I have this in a text message to somebody to verify it. Comer was injured all in 19. It came on as a sub in the last game. I'm not sure it was Burke in 20, but I think post-COVID he wasn't, if I'm not mistaken. But there was an All-Ireland club final there, so he didn't play the league. I'm not sure he was there post-COVID. He was definitely gone in 21. He was definitely gone in 22. Walsh missed most of the league, and by the time he came back, Comer and Burke were injured. So you've got three of the best forwards in the country back starting on the same team for the first time, if I'm not mistaken. Certainly championship, if not league as well.
And you've the best defence in the country. The best defence.
And the best defence in the country. Like, they stopped kicking the ball away. I hope. Yeah. They put certainly in the last 2 or 3 games, 6 minutes of madness against Roscommon. They've the best front three in the country, without question, in my opinion, statistically. We're talking about Kerry again, but they're as good as that anyway. I think even raw ability, Burke's as good as Clifford, different style of player. Yeah. But I think he won't kick the 40-yarders that Clifford kicks, but we'll come on to that again. Top class inside forward line. Best defence in the country at the moment. All they need to do, keep Bernie Power in goals. Stop kicking balls into blanket defences because it's not working. Play like an Ulster team. I know now this might offend the very soul of some Galway fraternity. Play Ulster football.
You won't be let down past that loan.
In 2018, which took Galway out of a 17-year lull. Play Ulster football. They had the best offensive figures this year. Play Ulster football. Do it. You might do something that Connacht teams haven't done since Ulster teams have done 4 or 5 and winning All Ireland. Tyrone 4, Donegal 1. And I think if they do it, if they keep those 3 things, keep Bernie Power in goal. He didn't have his best game on Sunday, but he still got some key short clips. Stop kicking the ball into blanket defences, even if Damien Comer's in there, because it's not adding up. And if that defence withstands the acid test against Dublin and Kerry, they could even be the favourites.
So listen, we're not promoting gambling on this show, as we know, but put your house on Galway, folks. You heard it here first. Now, speaking of Ulster football, right, we're going to move on. Are you happy?
We are, but I have to give you 1 point. I was planning on doing 10 minutes on this. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds on it. I'm going to go for, as Countdown says, a risky 8 and share my entire laptop screen here.
So this now, hold on to your seatbelts here, right? This, folks, is the Matrix.
This is the Matrix. In short, I'm going to give you 2 stats in short. If we count the last 4 touches in every phase, and you can pause it. If you pause this and have a study of it, I want to warn you, this is massively open to random swings and probability. You can see top class players at the bottom of this. But on 10 phases that went, this is the phases that went through each other's hands. Have you got that matrix up, Connor? You have, because I can't see.
Yeah, can you just use your cursor there, just to reference what your point is?
So we have
and
here,
just folks, just to relay just to the viewers, right? This is courtesy of GAA Pro Stats software, right? This is not something you've access to online. This is the professor's matrix. All right, Stephen, take it away.
Yeah, very briefly, I was planning on doing 10 minutes on this, but we look at this. If you only count the last 4 touches of every phase, 10 to Damien Comer's hands, 1-7 scored. That's 10 points from 10 phases. Galway have scored 4.2 times more when the ball has gone through Comer's hands compared to not in the last 4 touches. They've scored 5 out of 21, 24% when it didn't go through his hands. There's a lot of other little nuances we could look at there, but I think that in itself says enough. I'm not a big fan of the All-Stars. I'm not a fan of Man of the Match awards. Comer, the biggest theft of the century, not getting an All-Star in 2018. We can go into more detail. And again, we watch here a little bit of, again, we talked about maybe David Clifford syndrome a bit, but Damien Comer scored 1-4, 1 assist, 1 wide, 1 short attempt. Shane Walsh, on his good days, he's brilliant, but it is, the more than David Clifford, 1 point. Now, this gives credit to the man fouled for the free, by the way, not the scorer. Shane Walsh, 1 point, 3 wide, 1 assist. Are we seeing the percentages there? And Shane has a lot of games like that. Whereas Comer, this is obviously a high end for Comer. Burke, 2 assists, 1 point, 1 wide. And then just a few ones stuck in there. Paul Conroy, 3 assists, might go under the radar, albeit 3 turnovers on the day. But still, Matthew Tierney, 2 points, no misses. John Marr, 2 points, no misses. So, and again, Matthew Tierney, I've also sort of fallen in love with as well as a footballer, as you say. Thanks for verifying that on the last one. But even when he looked like he was having a bad day, popped up 2 points in 3 minutes, Matthew Tierney. So that's it. Man of the match, Damien Comer. Thank you.
Do Galway stop kicking the ball in?
They do what we're going to do, and they go and they look at Ulster.
Okay. So we go on to, next game, Hardly El Clasico. Okay. Donegal, we're not going to go into the politics of Donegal football this year, but they have had some trials and tribulations off the field, certain levels of discontent. They've been into the down match, right? Probably looking at both teams. This is not the Premier tier of Gaelic football this year. Neither of these we expect to contest any kind of latter stages of the match. But we're going to go in, right? Unlike our last number of slides, there was some crazy shot selection here by Donegal through the course of this match, in addition to our kick out, our kick out stats here. Here's the overview, Stephen. Here, bring us through this overview here first.
Yeah, I mean it's a very Ulster game. I mean there's a full game if you want to look at that, but I am always wary of game chasing stats covered a bit. This for me was a Division 2 Ulster game, and I hate saying that, but that's where Donegal are. That's the reality. Yeah. Now we're a hair's breadth from it. I think if we read through the boundaries, I think Down would be a top 16 team. But they're not in the league anyway. But don't be surprised if you see them in the All-Ireland. I think they have a real chance against Armagh. This is a real efficient Ulster game. Now, if this wasn't on BBC, I presume we'd have been hearing about how drab and dull it was. But as I say, it was Ulster analysts talking about Ulster football. And Philly McMahon, in fairness, was a very real view of the world. Obviously, 8 All-Irelands down the road. But Donegal 71% phases with shots, down 70%. So you're up near your goal standard there, but the key here is expected score per shot for down 75%. Donegal 56. Now, bear in mind, goals being 300% complicate this. Ultimately, Donegal's shot conversion rate of 44% to Down's 57% is the difference. So Down played processed Ulster football for the most part, and got to a position where they got their shots off, much better shot selections. Donegal hit some wild shots, and look, we'll see there. Donegal, all things being equal, the thinner line should have been a point or two up at half time. Had just, apart from poor shot selection, had shot poorly. Down took off there in the third quarter. Ward pointed out, in fairness, did I keep the expected score? Suppose Down ultimately should have been 1.7 up late on. In raw score, Sean Patton did hit the inside of the post with a free on 69 minutes. I think there was 2 in it. That goes over, it's 1. They're pressing the kick, but you look at Down's shot map there, you look at Donegal's, and those 2 images probably tell the story. And a huge amount of those, again, obviously, of a loyalty to the Donegal boys. I won't go into this forensically as I might on some of the Ulster forwards.
I mean, look at the left half forward position here. If you're a Donegal left half forward, I mean,
well, it's not about left half forward.
I know.
The guys shooting from there, not necessarily. Look, I think
think
there's a bit of a. I think that's slightly freaky that's come that way. Ultimately, a lot of low percentage shots. And ultimately, Down processed the life out of it, and they did it well. Donegal just shot too early under pressure too much of the time.
But Camille, tell you, right? Me, like a huge amount of viewers tune in, have huge admiration, respect for Donegal football. Not only Donegal football, but the calibre of football that Donegal produce are some of the best in the country in the last decade, right? On all lines of the field. You're now under this scenario where and bearing in mind they've had a couple of good years at underage setup as well, or under 20s. This now is way off where this group of players should be at. Albeit, I think there are a couple of injuries there carrying into this year. Michael Murphy's gone, but I mean, structure-wise, this is not the real Donegal.
Well, the issue is, look, I suppose I'll say 2 things, and one of the reasons I put up that chart is you will notice here where I'm pointing out. Just here, just for the 58th minute, or for 46th minute, Oisin Gallen came on the field, and you can see that yellow line spiking compared to the red over the next 20 minutes. And again, I don't think Donegal are doing a huge amount wrong in some sense. Now, a point was made to be contrary to Galway. They're just defended until the other team makes the mistake, and they don't make the mistake. I actually like elements of the defensive structure compared to previously. Stuff I was kind of calling for that I never got my way on is their deeper defensive line. I had a lot of stats on that, and they're trying that. But I suppose, look, before we move on to that, like I'm looking at the sheet here, and so Oisin Gallen, the game did turn when Oisin Gallen came on because he brought that drive, that raw ability. And look, I have a list of names here who played championship football in the last 2 years for Donegal who aren't available because they've retired, aren't playing this year, or are injured. I'm just going to go through it very quickly. I've left out goals because obviously I'm not talking about goalkeeper.
You're trying to make the Donegal lads feel better or worse here?
Well, the point is, I'm not saying that this 15 will be ahead of the other 15, but I think the 14 I'm going to name now would beat the current team. And that's not being disrespectful to the current 14. There's some fabulous footballers. There are no bad footballers in there. But just to give you an idea, no county could sustain this. Owen McHugh stepped away 2 years ago, one of the 2 standout man markers in Donegal.
Yeah.
Let's throw Neil McGee in there because he's a full back and you can bet your life on Neil anyway. Jamie Grant, I believe, just isn't their fancy. I can't understand that. One of the fastest footballers in Ireland, super football intellect. Pater Morgan's injured. Pater Morgan will be in Australia if he was 2 or 3 inches taller. Topped all the trials in Australia. Paul Brennan, one of the best game-reading centre-backs in the country, broke his leg or ankle. Ethan O'Donnell, even though Declan never maybe fancied him, contrary to my analysis, like if Declan was missing the players he's missing now, Ethan O'Donnell will be in the team. Michael Murphy, Aaron Doherty in midfield. Aaron Doherty is one of the best footballers in the country. Obviously, we all know Michael Murphy. Shane O'Donnell, Niall O'Donnell, or McFadden Ferry, Paddy McBrearty, or McNeilis, and then give Ryan McHugh number 15 and give him a free roll. And if you ask me, talking about the international standard players, for me, the international standard players in Donegal are Peadar Mogan, Michael Murphy, Aaron Doherty, Shane O'Donnell, Paddy McBrearty, and Ryan McHugh. And those 6 are on the list that aren't in at the moment. And I just think it's, look, who knows what the reason for some of that is. But yeah, I think Donegal are currently a Division 2 team, being honest. Jack McKelvey is out of favour as well. I can't understand him being so far down the pecking order with what's missing. But ultimately, this all manifests in the key figure I'm going to show you here in terms of kick-outs. And this, again, I've mentioned this last week. I've mentioned this last week in previous shows. We'll get this up here. And this is really the nuts and bolts of it. Unfortunately, Donegal were making massive profit hands on balls, scoring 1-8 from 14 short kickouts in one of the Armagh games last year. We look here, your raw, so bog standard stats, I think a lot of analysts are making mistakes with. Donegal, 24 kickouts, Down gave up a lot of them, 122, lost 2, scored 6 points, conceded 1, 0.21 profit per kick. That looks lovely. Down 0.29. But if we actually look at the real significant figure, what happened when a team's giving up the kick out, you have to calculate what's happening on the turnover. Down have got hands on balls at the full back line or half back line 13 times. They've scored 5, conceded 1 of the turnover. That may have even been the kick out that they lost. But either way, it's 0.29 of a point profit per kick. They're really exciting figures for Down.
Yeah.
Against and Donegal, they're still a Division 2 stand. They're not going to get relegated to Division 2. I can't see that happen. I still think the current team will be 3rd, 4th, 5th of Division 2, I would expect next year. That's without getting anybody back. That's really promising for Down. Donegal, 19 short hands on ball kickouts, scored 6, conceded 1-3 on the turnover. So there's no profit there. And I took out the expected value not to be bamboozling people. But there's no expected profit either. So that's Donegal have gone from profiting over 3 points per 10 on short kickouts to consistently breaking even at best, making a loss. You see,
this is very much a kind of coach to coach sort of part of the program, whereby you get an awful lot of amateur statisticians right on the sideline. They say, yeah, well, I mean, we got all these kickouts away, and they'll give up. Oh, we actually won 30 kickouts there in the short. But ultimately, those stats are rubbish, right? What you're looking at, as you alluded to there, this is very important, particularly for your fledgling coaches watching in, right? Your kickouts are decided by obviously completion, right? Let's say if they're short, long, that's recorded. What you score versus the concession. So you need to get a net value. This is what you have to build in to actually get an analytic whether the short kickouts or long kickouts are working. Is that correct?
Yeah, again, we look at the kickouts. I have all that in my software where you just tap the buttons and all the numbers come out. And you can say 15 minutes into a game, well, there's real value in this or there's not in the other. Ultimately, I got into this when Dublin played Cork in 2010 and both teams gave up kickouts. And I said, well, look, if teams are giving them up, let me measure this. And at the time when teams couldn't break down blanket defences, both teams were correct to give up the kick out because they weren't being broken down. Score on the counter attack. Bingo. Jim Gavin came along 2014 against Donegal. Changed tack. The rest is history. But now you've got to measure if there's value on the hands of ball or not. Intercounty football, if there's not, you've got big trouble. But I agree entirely. One loss means nothing. It's all what did you score on the ones you won? What did you concede on the turnover? What did you concede on the ones you lost? And that's where your matrix is all in there. But as I say, ultimately, Down were ultimately, we saw Armagh with the kickouts to Kerry. It wasn't statistically a good decision, contrary to common perception. My data showed Kerry had made a huge profit off of short kickouts. Down were correct to give up those kickouts because the data backs it up. Donegal, I thought, could and should have pressed. Our old school 4-4-4 has had huge joy in the past. I don't think it was used enough yesterday, especially when you see those Down kickouts making a profit of 2.9 points per 10 phases.
Yeah, and look, Galway, 23 Roscommon kickouts, 23 Roscommon possessions. But given the absolute force field they built up in the back line, structure, fellas knowing their positions, exactly what to do. They're comfortable bringing on the opposition, shepherding them down, eating them alive, getting the turnover, and boom, you know, ripping you to shreds on the break.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
look,
and
whether they do that against something like Kerry be interesting later in the year. But look, as ever, Professor, that has been absolutely intriguing stuff. Any final comments?
no, the All Ireland
You
might go
said
to
it all.
Ulster. The All Ireland might go to Ulster this year, but it'll be the Ulster west of the Shannon if they'll embrace the northern ways.
Lovely. Endearing yourself as always. Well done, O'Mara. Okay, folks, that is us for another action-packed week. Yes, it does drag on. Apologies for that, but we are very, very passionate about what we do. Thanks a million. Slán.